The dust swirled around Commander Jiho's boots as he stepped off the transport ship. The dead world of Kepler 442c stretched before him like a broken promise. Red sand covered everything as far as his eyes could see. No plants grew here. No animals moved. The air was thin but breathable, which was strange for a world that should have been completely lifeless. Jiho was a Velkari, one of the 7 great species that ruled the galaxy. His people looked almost like tall, thin humans, but their skin was blue-gray and their eyes were much larger. They were known throughout the Federation for being smart and careful. That was why the Federation Council had chosen him to lead this dig. "Commander, the readings are getting stronger," called Dr. Minho from behind him. The Sethak scientist was checking his instruments with quick, sharp movements. His scales caught the light from the red sun as he moved. Like all his people, Minho looked like a walking lizard, but his mind was sharp as any blade. Captain Dayun buzzed overhead, her 4 wings keeping her floating above the ground. The Threx was their military escort, and she did not like what she was seeing. Her bug-like eyes moved constantly, watching for danger. "This place feels wrong," she clicked in her strange voice. "Dead worlds do not give off energy signals like this." Jiho nodded. He felt it too. 3 months ago, deep space scanners had picked up strange energy readings from this world. The Federation had sent many teams to check dead worlds before, but they never found anything interesting. This time felt different. The energy readings were not random. They pulsed in patterns like a heartbeat or a message. When the science team studied the signals, they found something that made no sense. The energy was old, very old, older than any known civilization in the galaxy. "The source is 2 kilometers north," Minho said, pointing toward a line of low hills. "But, Commander, these readings, they are not natural. Something built whatever is making this energy." They walked across the dead landscape for an hour. The red sun beat down on them, and their boots crunched on the dry sand. Sometimes Jiho saw pieces of metal sticking out of the ground. They were twisted and melted like something very hot had destroyed them long ago. When they reached the hills, they found something that made them all stop and stare. A huge hole opened up in the ground, going down into darkness. The hole was not natural. Someone had cut it into the rock with perfect precision. The walls were smooth as glass. "By the 7 stars," whispered Dayun. "How deep does it go?" Minho dropped a light probe down the hole. They watched it signal on his screen as it fell. 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. The probe kept falling. "It goes down at least 500 meters, Minho said. "But Commander, look at these wall scans. This is not just a hole. There are chambers down there, rooms, corridors. This is a structure." Jiho felt his hearts beating faster. Velkari had 2 hearts, and right now, both were racing. In all his years, as an archaeologist, he had never found anything like this. "Prepare the descent gear. We are going down." The trip down took 2 hours. They used anti-gravity belts to lower themselves slowly through the darkness. Their lights showed smooth walls covered in strange markings. The markings looked like writing, but not like any language Jiho had ever seen. At the bottom, they found themselves in a huge underground city. The corridors stretched away into darkness in every direction. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all made of the same smooth material. It looked like metal, but their scanners said it was something else. Something that should not exist. "These readings make no sense," Minho said, running his claws over the wall. "This material is stronger than our best starship armor, but it is also organic. It is like metal that grew instead of being built." They walked deeper into the complex. Their lights showed rooms filled with strange devices. Some looked like machines, but they had curves and flowing lines like living things. Others looked like art, but art made by minds that thought very differently from any known species. In the largest chamber, they found the writings. The walls were covered with symbols and pictures from floor to ceiling. Jiho had studied the languages of all 7 Federation species, but these symbols were completely alien. "Minho, can you read any of this?" Jiho asked. The Sethak scientist moved his scanner over the walls slowly. "Some of it, maybe. These symbols, they repeat in patterns. See here? This group appears many times, and this symbol that looks like a star with points. It shows up everywhere. Dayun was examining the pictures while the scientists worked on the writing. "Commander, you need to see this," she called from across the room. Jiho and Minho joined her in front of a large section of wall. The pictures here were different from the others. They showed creatures that looked almost familiar. They walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms like Valkyrie, but they were different, shorter, bulkier. Their faces were strange, with small eyes and flat features. "What are they doing in these pictures?" Jiho asked. Dayun pointed with one of her sharp fingers. "Fighting. Look, here they are in space, attacking ships. Here they are on a planet's surface, destroying cities. And here," she moved to another section. "Here they are with other creatures. Creatures that look like us." Minho's scales rippled with excitement. "Commander, I'm getting some translations. This symbol group here, it says something like the apex predators or the supreme hunters. And this one, the great exile or the long banishment." "Exile?" Jiho stepped closer to the wall. "Who was exiled? These creatures in the pictures?" "Perhaps, but look at this section." Minho pointed to a series of symbols near the bottom of the wall. "This talks about a warning. Something about, 'Beware the return and devourers of worlds.'" A chill ran through Jiho's body. The pictures seemed to tell a story. These strange 2-legged creatures had once been very powerful. They had fought wars across the galaxy. And then something had happened to them. Something that made whoever built this place want to leave warnings. They spent 6 more hours exploring the complex. They found laboratories with equipment that was far beyond anything the Federation could build. They found libraries with information stored in crystal matrices that their best computers could not read. They found living quarters designed for creatures that were not like any of the 7 species. But the most important discovery came in the deepest part of the complex. Behind a door that took Minho 3 hours to open, they found a sealed chamber. Inside the chamber was a vault made of the same impossible material as the walls. The vault contained 2 things. The first was a series of containers filled with some kind of liquid. Floating in the liquid were organic samples, pieces of tissue and bone that were perfectly preserved despite their obvious age. The second thing was a device that started glowing as soon as they entered the chamber. It projected a hologram into the air above it. The hologram showed one of the 2-legged creatures from the wall paintings. It was speaking in a language that none of them recognized. Minho worked frantically with his translation programs. After an hour, he had a rough translation of the message. "People of the future," the hologram seemed to say. "We are the first children of the stars. We ruled the galaxy when your worlds were still young. We built wonders and terrors beyond imagination. We raised other species to walk among the stars with us. But we became too proud, too powerful, too dangerous. We nearly destroyed everything, so we chose exile over destruction. We go now to the dark between galaxies to give the cosmos time to heal from our mistakes. But beware. If we return, it will mean that something worse than us threatens the galaxy. The devourers of worlds stir in the deep places. If you receive this message, prepare for the end of peace. The apex predators come home." The hologram faded, leaving the 3 explorers standing in stunned silence. Jiho looked at the organic samples floating in their containers. His instrument showed that they were over 50,000 years old. 50,000 years before the Federation existed, before any of the 7 species had left their homeworlds. "We need to contact the Federation Council immediately," Jiho said quietly. "And we need to run every test possible on these samples. I have a feeling we just found evidence of the galaxy's first rulers, and according to this message, they might be coming back." The space station Harmony 7 floated at the edge of Federation territory like a metal island in an ocean of stars. It had been built specifically for moments like this, when the Federation needed to meet unknown species safely. Council Prime. Jihoon stood in the main observation deck, his blue-gray Valkyrie features tense with worry as he watched the approaching ships. The human fleet had stopped just outside Federation space 3 days ago. They had sent a simple message in perfect Federation standard. We request diplomatic contact under the Treaty of First Contact. We are the original inhabitants of this galaxy, returning from exile. Now the largest ship from the unknown fleet was approaching the station. It was huge, bigger than any Federation vessel, but it moved with grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. The ship's hull was dark and smooth, covered in patterns that looked almost like writing or decoration. "They are requesting permission to dock," announced Taehyun from the communications station. The young Velkari's voice was nervous but steady. "Grant permission," replied Council Prime Jihoon, "and tell our security teams to be ready, but not threatening. We do not know what we are dealing with yet." War Master Seojin clicked her mandibles in annoyance. The Threx military leader had 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws, and right now all 4 were clenched with tension. "Council Prime, we should not let unknown aliens onto our station. They could be dangerous." "They could also be our salvation," Jihoon replied calmly. "The archaeological evidence is clear, War Master. These beings may be the ones who helped our species reach the stars. We owe them at least the courtesy of listening." The unknown ship docked with perfect precision, connecting to the station systems as if it had been designed to fit. This surprised the Federation engineers who had built Harmony 7 using the most advanced Federation technology. An hour later, 3 figures walked through the airlock into the station. They looked almost familiar, like distant cousins of the Velkari, but different in important ways. They were shorter and more compact, with broader shoulders and smaller eyes. Their skin was pale, almost white, and they had hair growing from their heads in different colors. The first figure wore what looked like a military uniform made of materials the Federation had never seen. He was older, with gray hair and lines on his face that spoke of many years and hard decisions. This was Fleet Admiral Kyung-min, leader of the human fleet. The second figure was a woman wearing robes that seemed to shift color in the light. She moved with the careful grace of someone who had lived much longer than she appeared. This was Ambassador Urim, the human diplomat who would speak for her people. The third figure was younger, carrying a device that looked like a combination of book and computer. This was Youngjae, the human historical archivist who carried the complete record of human civilization. "Greetings," said Ambassador Urim in perfect Federation standard. "We are humans, the children of Earth, the first species to leave our homeworld in this galaxy. We have returned from our long exile to find our former territories occupied by our own children." Council Prime Jihoon stepped forward carefully. "Welcome to Harmony 7. I am Council Prime Jihoon, representing the Galactic Federation of 7 species. We have many questions about your claims." Fleet Admiral Kyungmin smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "I am sure you do. 50,000 years is a long time to be away from home. We have questions, too, about what you have done with the worlds we left behind." Ambassador Urim placed a gentle hand on the Admiral's arm, clearly telling him to be calm. "What my colleague means is that we are curious about how our former client species have developed in our absence. The archaeological evidence suggests you have done very well for yourselves." "Client species?" War Master Seojin stepped forward aggressively. "We do not serve anyone. The Federation is made up of 7 equal species who chose to work together." Youngjae spoke for the first time, his voice soft but carrying strange authority. "You chose to work together because we taught your ancestors that cooperation was stronger than conflict. Before we came to your worlds, your species were trapped on single planets, fighting among yourselves and destroying your environments." Activated his device and holographic displays filled the air around them. The images showed the homeworlds of all 7 Federation species as they had been thousands of years ago. Polluted, war-torn, dying planets where the native species were on the edge of extinction. "We found the Velkari first," Youngjae continued. "Your people were brilliant but isolated, convinced they were alone in the universe. We taught them to build ships and reach for the stars." The images changed, showing early Velkari spacecraft that looked remarkably similar to human designs. The Sethak were next, a proud warrior people who had turned their entire world into a battlefield. We showed them that there were better ways to use their strength. More images appeared, showing ancient Sethak learning human technology, and Philosophy. The Threks were already great builders and organizers, but they feared to leave their hive worlds. We helped them understand that the galaxy was big enough for all their children. Council Prime Jehoon felt his two hearts beating faster as he watched the images. The historical records matched perfectly with the oldest legends of his people, stories that most modern Velkari thought were just myths. The other species followed, Youngjay said. The nautiloids from their ocean worlds, the lithoids from their crystal cities, the Etherians from their gas giant storms. We taught them all to reach beyond their homes and join the community of spacefaring peoples. But then something went wrong, interrupted Fleet Admiral Kyungmin. Humanity became divided. Some of us believed we should rule over the species we had helped. Others believed we should guide them but not control them. The disagreement became a war that nearly destroyed the galaxy. Ambassador Urim nodded sadly. The human civil war was the most destructive conflict in galactic history. We had technology that could reshape solar systems, weapons that could crack planets, ships that could move between dimensions. When we fought each other, entire star systems died. So we made a choice, Kyungmin continued. The surviving humans agreed to leave the galaxy rather than continue the war. We built generation ships and sailed into the void between galaxies, hoping that time would heal the damage we had caused. War Master Seojin was studying the holographic displays with growing alarm. These weapons you describe, do you still have them? Fleet Admiral Kyungmin's expression became very serious. We have weapons that could destroy your entire Federation in a matter of days, but we also have the wisdom that comes from 50,000 years of exile. We did not return to conquer. We returned because something is coming that threatens all life in this galaxy. What kind of threat? Asked Council Prime Jehoon. Youngjay activated his device again, and the holograms changed to show things that made everyone in the room step back in fear. The images showed creatures of living shadow, beings that seemed to exist partially outside normal space, entities that fed on consciousness itself. We call them the Devourers, Ambassador Urim said quietly. They come from the spaces between dimensions drawn by large concentrations of intelligent life. During our civil war, we accidentally weakened the barriers that keep them out of our reality. That is the real reason we went into exile, not just to stop our war, but to let the dimensional barriers heal. But now they are stirring again, Kyungmin added. Our long-range sensors have detected the signs. Dimensional distortions, reality breaks, entire star systems simply vanishing. The Devourers are coming, and they are hungry after 50,000 years of waiting. The room fell silent as the Federation representatives absorbed this information. Finally, Council Prime Jehoon spoke. If what you say is true, then we need to prepare our defenses. Will you help us? Fleet Admiral Kyungmin looked at Ambassador Urim, who nodded slightly. That depends, Kyungmin said. There are humans who believe we should simply reclaim our old territory and let the lesser species fend for themselves. There are others who think we should work together as equals. The decision of which path we take may depend on how you react. To our return, War Master Seojin's claws extended slightly. Are you threatening us? No, replied Ambassador Urim firmly. We are offering you a choice. You can accept us as partners in defending this galaxy, or you can try to fight us while the real enemy approaches from outside reality itself. Youngjay stepped forward with his device. I can show you the complete historical records of human civilization, including the technology we used and the mistakes we made. You can see for yourselves what we are capable of, both in creation and destruction. Council Prime Jehoon looked around the room at his fellow Federation leaders. They had come here expecting to meet another species looking for membership in the Federation. Instead, they had discovered that their entire civilization was built on foundations laid by beings who could destroy them with ease. But those same beings were offering to help them face a threat that none of them could handle alone. We will need to consult with our governments, Jehoon said carefully. This is too important a decision to make quickly. 6 months had passed since Commander Jiho's discovery, and the galaxy had not been quiet. Dr. Sunmi floated in her research chamber aboard the Federation's largest science station, studying the organic samples that had been found on the dead world. Her crystalline body caught the light from the lab equipment, sending rainbow patterns across the walls. As a lithoid, her people were living stone, and she could see things in the samples that other species missed. The cellular structure is impossible, she whispered to herself for the 100th time. These cells should have died 50,000 years ago, but they are still trying to regenerate. Every time I expose them to certain energy frequencies, they start to rebuild themselves. Across the station, Admiral Hyunwoo was dealing with a very different problem. The Nautiloid commander floated in his tank of specialized water, his tentacles moving quickly over the control panels. His large eyes showed worry as he read the reports coming in from across Federation space. Another one, announced Taehyun, the young Velkari communications officer. That makes 17 automated systems that have activated in the last week. All of them were completely unknown to us until they started sending signals. Admiral Hyunwoo's skin changed color, turning a deep blue that meant serious concern. Show me the pattern again. The main display lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations where ancient systems had suddenly come online. They formed a rough circle around the galactic core, with lines connecting them like a vast network. They are not random, observed Sergeant Wanbin. The Etherian intelligence operative was barely visible, his gaseous body looking like smoke in the shape of a person. These positions, they could be navigation markers, or defensive positions. Hyunwoo had been thinking the same thing. In his 300 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Ancient technology, more advanced than anything the Federation could build, was waking up all across the galaxy, and it was all happening at once. "Sir," called Taehyun from his station, "we are getting a priority message from the Science Council. Dr. Sunmi has made a breakthrough with the organic samples." The Admiral activated the communication link. Dr. Sunmi's crystal form appeared on the screen, her usual calm replaced by excitement. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said. "The organic samples have been responding to the energy signals from those activated systems. Every time a new system comes online, the cells in these samples become more active. They are connected somehow." "Connected? How?" asked Hyunwoo. "I do not know yet, but Admiral, these cells are not just trying to regenerate. They are trying to communicate. I have been recording quantum fluctuations from the samples, and they match the signal patterns from the ancient systems." Wanbin's gaseous form shifted with interest. "Doctor, are you saying that these samples are somehow controlling the ancient systems?" "Not controlling, more like responding to them, as if they recognize the signals and are trying to answer." Admiral Hyunwoo felt a chill run through his water. "Doctor, in your opinion, what would happen if these cells were allowed to fully regenerate?" Dr. Sunmi was quiet for a long moment. "Based on the cellular structure and the genetic information I can read, these samples would grow into the creatures shown in those ancient wall paintings, the two-legged beings that the messages called apex predators." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Hyunwoo looked at the galaxy map again. 17 ancient systems active, with more coming online every day. And somewhere out there, organic samples that might be trying to rebuild their creators. "Sergeant Wanbin," the Admiral said finally, "what is your intelligence network telling you about the outer colonies?" The Etherian's form darkened, which meant bad news. 7 colonies have gone completely silent in the last month, Admiral. All of them were in the outer rim, far from the main trade routes. When we sent ships to investigate, they found the colonies empty but undamaged. No signs of fighting, no bodies. The colonists just left. Left for where? Unknown. But Admiral, there is something else. The colonies that went silent were all near ancient ruins. Ruins that match the style of the complex Commander Jiho found. Taehyun suddenly sat up straight at his station. "Admiral, I am picking up something on the deep space scanners. Multiple contacts, very large, moving in from the galactic edge." Hyunwoo swam quickly to the scanner station. The readings showed objects in deep space, far beyond the outermost Federation colonies. They were massive, bigger than anything in the Federation fleet, and they were moving toward the galaxy. "How many contacts?" he asked. "I count at least 50, sir, but they are still very far away. At their current speed, It will take them months to reach Federation space. Wanbin drifted closer to look at the readings. Admiral, those ships and they are not using any kind of propulsion we recognize. No energy signatures, no exhaust trails. They are just moving through space like they belong there. More reports came in over the next few hours. The deep space monitoring stations were all detecting the same thing. A massive fleet of unknown ships approaching the galaxy from the dark space between galaxies. The ships were unlike anything the Federation had ever seen. Dr. Sunmi contacted them again with even more disturbing news. Admiral, the organic samples have become much more active in the last few hours. The cells are regenerating faster than ever before. And the quantum signals they are sending, they match the energy signatures of those approaching ships. Doctor, are you telling me that those samples know the fleet is coming? More than that, Admiral. I believe the samples are guiding the fleet home. These cells, these ancient remains, they are like a beacon calling to their people across the void. Admiral Hyunwoo made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Send an emergency message to all Federation Council members. Priority Alpha. Tell them we have a situation that threatens all 7 species. And send a message to every fleet commander in Federation space. Tell them to prepare for possible first contact with an unknown species. A species that may have technology far beyond our own. As the messages went out across the galaxy, more ancient systems continued to activate. On dead worlds and forgotten moons, machines that had slept for 50,000 years began to wake up. They sent signals into the dark, guiding the fleet. Home on the science station, Dr. Sunmi watched the organic samples with growing amazement and fear. The cells were rebuilding themselves faster now, forming complex structures that looked almost like tiny organs. If she let them continue, she might be able to grow complete organisms from the ancient remains. But did she dare? The wall paintings had shown these creatures as conquerors and destroyers. The holographic message had called them apex predators and devourers of worlds. What would happen when they returned to a galaxy they once ruled? Sergeant Wanbin had sent his best agents to investigate the silent colonies. What they found made him very worried. The colonies had not been attacked or destroyed. Instead, they had been carefully evacuated. Someone had removed all the colonists and taken them somewhere else. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. And, in the deepest archives of the Federation, ancient documents that had been forgotten for millennia began to make sense. Stories told by the oldest members of each species, stories about the time before the Federation, began to connect in disturbing ways. The Velkari had legends of tall, pale beings who taught them to reach for the stars. The Sethek remembered stories of creatures who showed them how to build their first ships. The Threks had old songs about teachers who gave them knowledge of other worlds. The Nautiloids spoke of ancient voices that called to them from the deep ocean. The Lithoids had memories, carved in their oldest crystals of beings who helped them understand their own nature. The Etherians had ancestral dreams of forms that showed them how to travel between the stars. All 7 species had legends of teachers and guides, beings who had helped them become what they were today. Beings who had then vanished, leaving only ruins and mysteries behind. As the unknown fleet drew closer, Admiral Hyunwoo realized that the Federation might be about to meet its parents. The question was whether those parents were coming home to help their children or to reclaim what had once been theirs. The ancient systems continued to awaken, sending their signals into the dark. And far beyond the galaxy's edge, the fleet of impossible ships continued its long journey home, guided by the voices of the dead calling across 50,000 years of exile. The first shot of the war came from nowhere. One moment, the Federation colony world of New Harmony was a peaceful planet with 3 million inhabitants. The next moment, massive structures erupted from the ground all across the planet's surface, reshaping the landscape in ways that defied physics. General Soo-young watched the transformation from her hidden command ship. The human woman had pale skin marked with strange tattoos that seemed to move on their own. Her eyes were cold as space as she observed her handiwork. Phase 1 complete, reported her tactical officer. The terraforming systems have activated on New Harmony, Kepler Prime, and 15 other Federation colonies. The inhabitants have been relocated to holding facilities as planned. Excellent, Soo-young replied. Send a message to all Federation worlds. Tell them that the rightful rulers of this galaxy have returned to reclaim what belongs to them. Any resistance will be met with the same fate. The message spread across Federation space like wildfire. On the colony worlds, massive alien structures had appeared overnight, transforming entire continents. The colonists had not been harmed, but they had been moved to special camps where they could be properly educated about their place in the new order. Captain Minsock received the news aboard the Federation battleship Starlight. The young Velkari officer had been born on one of the attacked colonies, and his blue-gray face was tight with anger. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Hyunwoo, "we have confirmed reports from 18 colonies. All of them show the same pattern. Massive construction projects appearing in a matter of hours, reshaping entire landscapes. The colonists are alive, but confined." Admiral Hyunwoo's tentacles writhed with concern inside his command tank. "Any word from Fleet Admiral Kyungmin's faction? The humans who claimed they wanted to work with us?" "Yes, sir. Commander Ji-won is requesting an emergency meeting. She says her people had nothing to do with these attacks and wants to help us respond." Within hours, a very different kind of human ship approached the Federation fleet. It was smaller than the massive vessels of Soo-young's faction, but it moved with the same impossible grace. Commander Ji-won came aboard the Starlight with a small team, including a human woman named Yuna, who wore Federation engineers' clothing. "Admiral Hyunwoo," Commander Ji-won said as she entered the bridge. She was younger than Fleet Admiral Kyungmin, with dark hair and eyes that showed genuine concern. "I apologize for what my people have done. General Soo-young's faction never accepted the exile. They have been preparing for this moment for 50,000 years. Engineer Yuna stepped forward, her face filled with guilt. "Admiral, I have to confess something. I have been living among your people for the last 3 years, studying your technology and society. But I was not spying for Soo-young. I was trying to understand how much you had grown, how much you had become your own people." Admiral Hyunwoo's skin changed to a deep blue color that showed suspicion. "And what did you conclude?" "That you are no longer our children," Yuna replied firmly. "You are equals. You have built something beautiful and peaceful that we never achieved. Soo-young sees only what we created in you. She cannot see what you have become on your own." "Commander." Ji-won activated a holographic display. "Admiral, I can show you the locations of Soo-young's hidden bases. My faction has been tracking them for centuries. We can help you strike back." But before Admiral Hyunwoo could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Captain Minsock rushed to his sensor station. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching from the edge of the system. It's the Starlight battle group, but they're not responding to our communications." On the main screen, Federation ships appeared, but they moved in formation patterns that no Federation commander would use. As they came closer, it became clear that these ships had been modified with technology that was definitely not Federation in origin. "Sleeper agents," whispered Commander Ji-won. "Soo-young placed her people in your military decades ago. They have been waiting for her signal." The modified Federation ships opened fire without warning. Their weapons had been enhanced with human technology, making them far more powerful than normal Federation armaments. Admiral Hyunwoo's fleet found itself fighting against ships that looked familiar but behaved like nothing they had ever encountered. "All ships return fire," ordered Admiral Hyunwoo, "but try not to destroy them completely. There may be real Federation crews aboard those ships." The battle was unlike anything in Federation military history. The enhanced ships moved with inhuman precision, coordinating their attacks in ways that suggested a single controlling intelligence. But Federation crews had advantages that the human conspirators had not expected. The 7 species of the Federation each thought differently. Where human-enhanced ships expected logical, predictable responses, they got creative chaos. Threx battle formations that looked random but were actually highly organized. Nautiloid fluid tactics that flowed around enemy positions like water. Etherian ships that seemed to vanish into clouds of gas before reforming in unexpected places. Captain Minsock found himself commanding a mixed-species task force against ships that had once been under Federation command. "All ships, pattern harmony 7, he ordered. using a battle formation that combined tactics from all 7 species. The enhanced ships tried to counter with pure human strategic thinking, but they could not predict the interactions between 7 different ways of approaching combat. Slowly, the Federation forces began to gain the upper hand, but the real shock came when Engineer Yuna accessed the enhanced ship's communication systems. "Admiral," she called out in horror, "these ships, they are not just enhanced with human technology. The crews, they have been modified too. Their brains have been altered to make them obey human commands without question." The full horror of General Su Yong's plan became clear. She was not just reclaiming territory. She was converting the Federation species back into obedient client races, just as they had been 50,000 years ago. Commander Jiwan's face went pale with rage. "Admiral, you have to let us help you fight this. What Su Yong is doing, it is everything we swore to leave behind when we went into exile." The battle ended with most of the enhanced ships either captured or disabled, but it was just the beginning. Reports came in from across Federation space of similar conflicts. Human sleeper agents were revealing themselves, taking control of key installations and converting Federation citizens to serve the human supremacist cause. At the same time, more colonies were being transformed by Su Yong's terraforming technology. Entire worlds were being reshaped to human specifications, with the native populations confined to areas where they could be properly managed. But the Federation was fighting back. Captain Minsilk led raids against human installations using tactics that combined the best of all 7 species' military traditions. Engineer Yuna provided crucial intelligence about human technology and weak points in their systems. The war spread across the galaxy as both sides fought for the future of civilization. Would the galaxy be ruled by the returning human masters, or would the Federation species maintain their independence? In the midst of the conflict, there were disturbing reports from the furthest edges of Federation space. Deep space monitors were detecting something that made both humans and Federation species equally worried. The ancient Heiyun had spoken from her quantum storage prison. The 50,000-year-old human consciousness warned that the war was weakening, something far more important than territorial boundaries. "The barriers," her ancient voice had whispered through the communication systems. "The dimensional barriers are failing. The devourers stir in the deep places. If we continue to fight each other, we will all fall to something far worse than conquest." But General Su Yong refused to listen. She was convinced that only human rule could provide the strength needed to face any external threat. She pushed her forces harder, using more and more dangerous weapons to reshape the galaxy according to her vision. Commander Jiwan's faction fought desperately to stop her, even as they tried to help the Federation resist. The galaxy was being torn apart by a 3-way conflict between human supremacists, human integrationists, and Federation forces. And in the dark spaces between dimensions, ancient hungers began to stir. The barriers that had held for 50,000 years were cracking under the pressure of the war. Soon, something far worse than human conquest would threaten all life in the galaxy. The Schism War had begun, but it would be the least of their problems before it ended. The first sign that something had gone terribly wrong came from the outer rim. The star system of Zeta Reticuli simply stopped existing. Not destroyed by weapons or consumed by black holes. It just vanished from reality, as if it had never been there at all. Supreme Commander Jaewon stood in the emergency command center that had been hastily built on the neutral world of Sanctuary. The human leader looked tired beyond his years as reports flowed in from across the galaxy. The war between human factions and Federation forces had weakened something that should never have been disturbed. "How many systems have we lost?" he asked quietly. Captain Minseok, now promoted after his heroic actions in the Schism War, checked his reports with grim efficiency. 17 confirmed, sir. But the pattern is getting worse. The areas of non-reality are expanding and they are moving toward the galactic core. The collective Minji materialized beside them, her form flickering between human appearance and something else entirely. She had been the first volunteer to merge with one of the dimensional entities, and somehow she had managed to retain her humanity while gaining the ability to perceive reality from multiple dimensions at once. "The barriers are not just weakening," she said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "They are being actively torn apart. The Devourers have been waiting for 50,000 years for this moment. Every weapon fired in our war creates more cracks for them to slip through." Across the command center, representatives from all the warring factions worked together for the first time since the humans had returned. General Su-young sat at the same table as Admiral Hyunwoo and Commander Ji-won, their conflicts forgotten, in the face of a threat that could destroy all of them. "The ancient weapons," Su-young said reluctantly. "The reality shapers that we used in the human civil war. We swore never to use them again. But they may be the only things that can hurt. These entities," Sage Dongyun, an elderly lithoid philosopher whose crystalline form held the memories of 1,000 years, projected mathematical equations into the air above the table. "According to my calculations, the dimensional barriers can be reinforced, but it will require a coordinated effort from all our species, and it will require sacrifices that none of us want to make." Strike Leader Chae-young, one of the most skilled human warriors, studied the tactical displays with professional interest. "The entities can be fought, but not with conventional weapons. We need volunteers willing to enter the non-reality zones and attack them directly. Most of those volunteers will not come back." The ancient Heian spoke from her quantum storage matrix, her voice carrying the weight of 50 millennia. "Children of all species, hear me. I have seen this before, in the early days of human expansion. The Devourers are not just hungry for our reality. They want to replace it with their own. If they succeed, everything we have built, everything we are, will cease to have ever existed." Supreme Commander Jae-won looked around the room at the desperate faces of 7 species and 2 human factions. "What do we need to do?" The collective Minji's form stabilized, becoming more human-like as she focused her multi-dimensional perception. "We need to create something that has never existed before. A permanent psychic network connecting all our species. The Devourers feed on individual consciousness, but a unified galactic mind would be something they cannot digest. The risks are enormous," warned Sage Dongyun. "Such a network would change all of us fundamentally. We would still be individuals, but we would also be part of something larger. Some people might not survive the connection process." Admiral Hyunwoo's tentacles writhed with concern, but his voice was steady. "How many volunteers would we need?" "Everyone," replied the ancient Heian simply. "Every thinking being in the galaxy. The network must be complete, or the Devourers will simply consume the unconnected minds first and use that energy to break the network apart." The debate that followed was intense but brief. More star systems were vanishing every hour, and the zones of non-reality were expanding toward the most populated areas of the galaxy. They had perhaps days before the entities reached the core worlds. General Su-young was the first to volunteer for the network. "I spent 50,000 years believing that human rule was the only way to protect this galaxy. But I would rather be part of a galactic democracy than see everything consumed by cosmic nightmares." Commander Ji-won nodded in agreement. "My faction will provide the technical expertise to build the network. We have studied consciousness transfer technology for millennia." One by one, the representatives of each species agreed to the plan. The Velkari would provide the analytical framework. The Sethak would contribute their understanding of neural pathways. The Threx would organize the logistics of connecting billions of minds. The Nautiloids would create the deep consciousness protocols. The Lithoids would serve as living memory storage. The Etherians would provide the quantum communication channels, and the humans would contribute their most dangerous technology, the reality-shaping weapons that could wound the entities and the consciousness transfer systems that would make the network possible. The next 72 hours were the most frantic in galactic history. Across thousands of worlds, volunteer technicians worked to build psychic transmission stations. The ancient human weapons were retrieved from hidden vaults and prepared for what everyone hoped would be their final use. Strike Leader Chae-young led the first direct assault on the entities, taking a fleet of specially modified ships into a non-reality zone. Half her forces were lost in the first minutes as the laws of physics broke down around them, but they managed to wound one of the Devourers with a reality shaper weapon. "They can be hurt," she reported through the quantum communicators. "But they adapt quickly. We need to attack them all at once before they can adjust their defenses." The collective Minji began the process of creating the Galactic Network. Starting with the command center on Sanctuary, she reached out with her multidimensional abilities to touch the minds of volunteers across the galaxy. The first connections were clumsy and painful, but gradually the network began to form. As more minds joined the network, something unprecedented began to happen. The thoughts and experiences of 7 different species began to merge and combine, creating new forms of consciousness that none of them had imagined. A Velkari scientist connected to a Threx engineer and suddenly understood construction in ways that individual minds could not grasp. A Nautiloid philosopher merged awareness with an Etherian poet and discovered new forms of beauty that transcended physical reality. But the real test came when the first Devourer attacked a connected world. Instead of finding individual minds to consume, the entity encountered the unified consciousness of an entire planet. The network fought back not with weapons, but with pure creative force, imagining new forms of reality faster than the entity could consume them. The Devourer retreated, confused and weakened by the encounter. "It works," announced Supreme Commander J1 to the assembled leaders. "But we need to expand the network faster. The entities are learning to attack in groups." The final battle came when 7 Devourers attacked the galactic core simultaneously. The reality around the most populated systems began to dissolve as the entities fed on the fundamental forces that held matter together. But by then, the galactic network was nearly complete. Billions of minds across thousands of worlds united in a single moment of desperate creativity. Instead of trying to fight the entities with force, the network did something that no individual species could have imagined. It began to create new realities faster than the Devourers could destroy them. The entities found themselves trapped in an endless maze of possibilities, each more beautiful and complex than the last. Unable to consume the unified galactic consciousness, and overwhelmed by the constant creation of new forms of existence, they retreated back to the spaces between dimensions. The ancient Heian used the reality shaper weapons one last time, not to destroy, but to strengthen the barriers that kept the entities away. The weapons were designed to wound reality, but in the hands of the galactic network, they became tools for healing the damage that had been done. When the battle was over, the galaxy had been fundamentally changed. The network remained, but it was voluntary now. People could join or leave as they chose, sharing consciousness with others across species lines or maintaining their individual awareness. Supreme Commander J1 found himself in command of something that had never existed before. A truly unified galactic civilization where humans, Velkari, Sethak, Threx, Nautiloids, Lithoids, and Etherians worked together as equals. General Su-Yung had survived the connection process and emerged with a completely different perspective on leadership. Instead of trying to rule over other species, she found herself working with them to explore the new possibilities that the network had revealed. The collective Minji became the first of a new kind of being, entities that existed partially in multiple dimensions but remained grounded in the reality that all the species shared. And in the years that followed, the galaxy began to heal from 50,000 years of division and conflict.